Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Bright Violet Arts. My name is Valerie, and I am setting up my bullet journal today for February 2025. And the theme that I went with is it's kind of a hybrid theme. It's going to have some traditional Valentine's Day imagery mixed in with the coquette aesthetic. It's actually very heavy on the coquette side. If you're not familiar with the coquette aesthetic, I will explain in detail what that entails. It's just a fashion trend. It's a style, and I leaned in really heavily to it, and it was really fun. This theme really resonated with me. I think because in my heart I am very much a girly girl, and the art was just tremendously fun to create. So I hope you enjoy watching the process. I'm going to talk about illustration techniques. I'm going to talk about materials, and it's going to be a good time. So let's jump into the cover page. I've used the foligraphy technique to write out the word February. That just means I wrote it in my normal handwriting, but I thickened up the downstroke on each letter, which allows me to get those thick and thin lines that resemble like brush lettering or calligraphy. And I've done some scroll work doodles, which just basically is what I call these like little spiral doodles that have other shapes and objects kind of flowing out of them in sort of a graceful way. And I'm using some Valentine's imagery, of course, the hearts and the leaves and the berries. I'm starting my coloring process with a light wash of watercolor. I've got traditional watercolor, and then I'm also using some opaque metallic gold watercolor. And I'm not going to be that careful or precious with the watercolor technique because it's actually just going to be a background. I'm going to be coming back over this watercolor once it's dry with other materials, mainly colored pencil. Colored pencil this month is the star of the show, and I'll show you here shortly how much that adds in terms of like vibrancy and saturation to the watercolor background. So the watercolor for me, it's really just a base color. You know, all of my highlights and shadows are going to be done with the colored pencil. And then now I'm looking at some Distress Oxide ink. This is a creamy ink that if you apply enough of it becomes quite opaque. It is excellent for bullet journaling. I'm just brushing it on to create a background. I'm using 3 different colors to get kind of a like a mottled blended effect. And of course I did use masking tape to mask off the area that I'm coloring so I get those nice crisp edges. The nice thing about Distress Oxide is that once it's dry, which only takes a couple of minutes, once it's dry, you can come back over it. Obviously here I'm applying some washi tape. It's going to stick just fine. But I'm also going to use some other like pencils and markers and paint pens and stuff on it too. To dress up my quote page, I've added a frame and I want it to be really, really shiny. So I'm starting off with a gold paint pen. And then as an extra optional step, I'm going to cover that gold paint pen with a layer of the metallic gold watercolor. That is definitely optional. The paint pen looks great on its own, but I really like the smooth and almost dimensional finish that the metallic watercolor provides. So I like to put that on top of my paint pen whenever I can. So to get into like what the coquette aesthetic refers to, I'm going to reference a little bit of Wikipedia and then I'm going to kind of explain how I think of it as well. So basically, Wikipedia says it's a 2020s fashion trend that's characterized by a mix of sweet, romantic, and sometimes playful elements, focusing on femininity through the use of clothes with lace, flounces, pastel colors, and bows. I think it's much more than that. Like when I go to Pinterest and I look at coquette quotes or coquette aesthetic or, coquette girl or coquette clothing or any of that stuff, What comes back to me is kind of a mix of a very flirtatious, confident, girl power kind of sense or sensibility. It's there's definitely like a daintiness and a preciousness to it, but there's also like a lot of glamour and just a touch of sex appeal. So it encompasses all of those things. And as far as the like most iconic imagery, the pink bow is what I always see. Anything that's like referring to coquette has a pink bow, like, like a ribbon, either a hair bow in a girl or a bow around some kind of object or, whatever. So to that end, I have attempted to put bows on most every page that I illustrated for this theme. I think this calendar is actually the only page that doesn't have a pink bow on it. But I do think that I captured enough femininity with the scroll work and then like these little hearts and stuff to get the point across. So you can see here the colored pencil is adding so much like life and so much depth to the illustrations. But one caveat is that the first layers of colored pencil will transfer onto the page behind it or the page that touches it. So to take care of that, I'm using a piece of scratch paper in between the previous pages that I've done as I'm illustrating on the opposite side, like such. When the first layer of colored pencil has kind of transferred off, the rest of it is pretty much absorbed into the paper, and it's not going to be a problem transferring like when I'm using the bullet journal later. It's just when I'm illustrating it and I'm using a lot of pressure on the opposite pages, that's when I want to have a scrap paper in between the last page that I did. So that's just a way to kind of protect yourself from unwanted marks. Okay, so the next page up is going to be for a task list and for my habit trackers. And I have sketched in a little bouquet of roses. And I'm using like a very flat wash of pink for the pink bow and the pink roses. I am not worried about getting any kind of shadow or dimension or any of that with this wash because, like I said, I'm going to come back later with colored pencil. And the same, with the green here. This whole sketch is going to be detailed with colored pencil in the final step of this page. I'm just going to stamp out 4 little calendars for my habit tracker. And then, of course, there's only 28 days in February, so I used a white paint pen to color in or color over the days that do not exist in this month. And then I've added some scroll work at the bottom of this page just to keep it cohesive with the other illustrations. The roses are a little bit of a different style than the doodles that I had on the other 2 pages. So I want that scroll work to tie all the pages together, even though not all of the illustrations are in the same style. And now I'm going back in with my colored pencil to finish off this illustration of the roses and the bow. And the colored pencils, I'm using, 4 or 5 different shades to give me some detail and some dimension on that illustration. And I think it turned out really pretty. I'm going to move on now to a new spread that I've actually never put in any of my bullet journals before, but it seemed like a good idea because what I'm calling it is house and spouse. And what it refers to is a meeting that my husband and I have decided to have once a week. We're going to do it every Sunday. And instead of having throughout the week, a bunch of different asks, right? Like a honey-do list that just goes on and on and on. We've decided to kind of jot them down throughout the week and then have a sit down where we kind of go over, asks and expectations for each other and just go over the plans for the week. So I came up with house and spouse to be a parking lot for those sorts of issues and tasks. And the illustration here is like definitely giving Cinderella vibes with the little bows and the little swirls and stuff. But I love it. I think it's so cute. And again, I'm, bringing in the metallic watercolor over the paint pen to clean it up and give it a softer sort of luster. This is a good example of how much the colored pencil adds to a watercolor background, particularly the white. The white is like the universal blender for any color of colored pencil. Once you put the white on, it sort of blends all your other colors together. And that's when, for me, a colored pencil illustration comes to life. Is the last step I always do is take a white and blend all of my colors together, and it creates a very soft blended look that I really haven't been able to duplicate with very many other mediums. Okay, moving on to the first weekly setup. I love this quote: "Clever as the devil and twice as pretty." It's very like tongue in cheek, right? But it seems to describe the quintessential coquette girl, like confident and sexy and meant to be said with a wink. I sketched in the illustration with a pencil and then I used a fine liner to color it in. Of course, it goes without saying that if you're going to use watercolor, it's very important to use a waterproof fine liner. I like the Copic multi-liners. That's my favorite fine liner. I use other brands too. I know a lot of people like the Pigma Micron by Sakura. I use that too. I think I used it in this setup, but nothing is quite as like really waterproof for me in my experience as the Copic multi-liners. So that's just, a recommendation that I have if you're in the market for some. And I will link the Copic multi-liners in the description box. I'm also going to link the watercolor set that I'm using. It is the Gold Class Mission Pure Pigment set, but any kind of watercolors you have will be fine, especially if you're going to use colored pencil on top of them, because again, the watercolor just provides a foundation for your details. The colored pencils, though, I find that the brand really matters. Less expensive colored pencils have broken my heart so many times. I've tried to buy like less expensive sets over the years, and I'm disappointed every time. Prismacolor is the classic that seems to be well loved by almost every artist. I've actually never used those, but the ones I'm using today are the Caran d'Ache Luminance 6901 pencils, and I cannot speak highly enough about them. They have just changed my life. I love them. The color is so rich and vivid, and I will definitely link those in the description box for you guys to take a look at. They're on the pricier side, but they are an investment, and they have lasted me a very long time, and I still use them quite often. So anyway, getting back to the time lapse, this is the second weekly setup, and I'm going with a different style of illustration here. I inked in my sketch there, and now I'm just going all out with a total mixed media approach. I've done some paint pen and some watercolor and some fine liner so far on this. And my inspiration for this illustration was a quote by Oscar Wilde, and it said, "My existence is a scandal." And I just thought, like, one, I can relate, and two, it seemed perfect with the coquette vibes. So I just wanted to kind of capture the look of a dressing table for, a glamour girl, a coquette girl. And I filled it up with little accessories and things that she might have. Of course, I wanted to get that pink bow in the illustration somewhere. And then I just kind of had fun freestyling with the other objects. The sunglasses were my favorite though, because I was really happy that I could achieve like a reflection on the lenses and still keep the lenses light enough that they were somewhat translucent and you could see the objects sitting behind them. For the bow, because I really wanted the bow to stand out, and it just didn't with the watercolor that I was using because the colors were getting too much the same. For this object only, I busted out my acrylic paint because I knew the acrylic paint would be completely opaque and totally bright. So I got some neon pink acrylic paint to paint the bow. That way I knew it would be a focal point in the illustration. So I'm doing a rather large scroll work detail up here, mainly just because I had extra room to fill up on the page. I have my 6 daily boxes on the other side, and there was space to fill, but I like the balance because the illustration was so colorful and bright. I liked the balance of the extra large scroll work too. So this one's kind of fun. This is like a coquette's prayer. Please, Lord, make me the biggest star the world has ever seen. Like, I don't know if anybody else thinks that's funny, but I just think that is hilarious. And I thought for the illustration, like a stack of newspapers and some roses and some champagne, that seems to fit, like, the dream of a starlet, which is what I was going for. And I do want to say on the daily boxes that I have on the opposite side of this spread, the days of the week are stickers. It's a nice black script. It's a monoline script. And whenever I use those in my Plan With Me videos, I tend to get questions almost every time about, where did I purchase them, because they are extremely useful, and they come in a sticker set that has like 30 pages of days of the week stickers in all different kinds of fonts. Some of them are gold foiled, some of them are black, some of them are, all different colors and different font styles. So just to answer the question ahead of time, those are from Hobby Lobby. The brand is the Paper Studio, and they're called Agenda 52. And the name of the design is just called Numbers and Days Foiled Stickers. I will link that. I think they're like maybe $8.99 right now on the Hobby Lobby site for US customers. So here's a look at the last weekly setup, and now we are at the final flip through. So I hope that you enjoyed this Valentine coquette setup for February. I enjoyed it so much. It's one of my all-time favorites. If you did like it, or if you got value from the video, please click the like button and think about subscribing if you enjoy journaling content like this. You can find more of my journal and my other illustration and painting work on Instagram. I'm at Bright Violet Arts over there. And the comments are open, of course, if you have any feedback on today's video, or if you have any questions about materials or techniques, any input for future videos or themes that you might like to see me try on this channel. All of that stuff would be great. I would love to read it. So let me know. And if you're still here at this point in the video, I would love it so much if you left a bow emoji in the comments. Thank you so much for checking out Bright Violet Arts, and until next time, happy journaling.